She does not, quote, look blind. She does not use mobility aids. She doesn't visually look disabled in any way, and it does not impact her day-to-day life in a significant manner yet from what we could see. That's very palatable. It was a very easy way for them to dip their toes into representation at a surface level. The moment I saw the trailer for season 9 of Love is Blind and I heard Madison say she has night blindness, tunnel vision, and may go blind in the future due to a progressive eye disease, I was like, ding, 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 we've got RP representation. We've got some blindness on Love is Blind. Finally. Actually, my boyfriend filmed me reacting, so if we find the clip, insert here. Oh my God, I think somebody blind is on Love is Blind. I think she has RP.
Madison. I have a blinding eye condition, and there's a good chance that I'm gonna go blind. This experiment is so much more to me because it simulates what my life could be like when I do lose my vision. I know what I need in a partner with my diagnosis. So it's so important that I find that correct person and that somebody is so empathetic and understanding.
What's the diagnosis?
Yeah.
I think it's RP. Okay, I saw in the trailer, night blindness, tunnel vision, could go blind. That's giving RP baddie. That's giving RP sister. I am so excited. Not for her going blind. But for representation, we love it. That's how excited I was, which might seem crazy to some people who have never had to deal with not seeing yourself represented. But for those of us with disabilities, especially when you have like a very specific rare disease, it is so isolating because when I talk about representation and its importance, I'm not saying like we just lack representation in media as disabled people. For those of us with disabilities, we often lack representation, period. We don't see ourselves on TV, we don't hear ourselves on the radio, but we also don't see ourselves in advertisements. We don't see ourselves in considerations for product design. We don't see ourselves in school, in our office environment. We don't see ourselves on dating apps. We don't see ourselves in our immediate friend circle. We don't see ourselves at summer camp or music school or at the local grocery store or restaurant when we're running errands. We don't see ourselves, period, unless we specifically seek out those environments where we're maybe at a school for the blind or a camp for the blind, or we're in support groups on Facebook, or we're watching content based on hashtags like hashtag babe with a mobility aid. Like, we need to seek it out. And it has only been in recent years that we have any, basically, period. So seeing that representation, that little bit of representation is like so exciting, especially on a show called Love is Blind, because I'm gonna admit, in 2020 when the show first came out, I think that's when it first came out. I feel like that's when I first remember seeing it. All I remember is I was deep in lockdown because I'm not usually a reality TV girl, especially like dating reality TV. I've never seen Bachelor. I've never seen Love Island. Look, clearly I don't watch that stuff. I don't even know the names. So it's not usually my cup of tea, but I was like scrubbing the bottom of the barrel for content, doom scrolling in the 2020 era. And so Love is Blind came on Netflix and I was like, oh my God, a dating show for blind people, like Love on the Spectrum, but for us blindies. And I was so excited. And then I started watching it, I was like, I've been duped. This is not what the show is about. And ever since I've been like, we need some representation in this show, come on now. But I also had a hunch it would never happen. And I'm gonna get into that a little bit later in this classic Molly Ramble style video. If you haven't clued in yet, buckle up, that's what you're in for. I was like disappointed, but I'm not gonna lie. I fell in love with the concept. Like I was like, I'm committed. And if you wanna hear like my full deep dive opinion specifically on Love is Blind as a blind person, I did do a whole video on that a couple of years ago. So I'll have that linked at the end of this video if you wanna watch that. This is specifically going to focus on Madison, disability representation in dating shows, and that kind of stuff. I feel like, I think it was last season in Minnesota, was it? I watch all the seasons, but I've got too much to remember in this brain, so I can't remember. But I'm pretty sure it was last season, Minnesota, where Daniel had a blind sister. So Daniel was one of the pod daters who, spoiler alert, ended up getting married. When he was in the pods, he'd mentioned having a blind sister and how that is what intrigued him to do this experiment because, you know, he wanted to see what it was like for his sister. Later in the season, she made some appearances as like a character on the outskirts, one of the supporting roles, if you will. And like she had a guide dog, she was proper blind, and it was very exciting. Like seeing a guide dog on like a mainstream show on Netflix, very exciting, with like a real blind person. And I can still remember the first time I saw representation on TV. In fact, I talk about it in my book, Unseen: How I Lost My Vision But Found My Voice, out now everywhere books are sold, in audiobook, ebook, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your local indie bookstore. It's everywhere. Pick it up and leave a good review if you enjoy it on Goodreads, Amazon, Audible. Thank you so much, I appreciate it. It's a vibe. Anyways, in that book, I talk about the first time I ever remember seeing representation, which, funny enough, was also on reality TV. It was on America's Next Top Model, Cycle 3, I believe. Her name was Amanda, and she had retinitis pigmentosa. And I was like 8 years old in grade 3, and I was so elated. I'm pretty sure I might be foggy, but I'm definitely foggy, I am foggy. But like, I was elated. I remember my whole family started watching that season with me. Like, they were so excited. And I grew up dreaming of working in the entertainment industry. I would do fashion photo shoots in the backyard with my mom, who was a professional photographer, and I would like beg her to do photo shoots with me. Like, I grew up wanting to be that triple threat actor, singer, dancer, model. I wanted to do it all. And so seeing Amanda on America's Next Top Model talking about having RP meant the world to me at a time when I was still so young and so early in my diagnosis journey, so early in my vision loss journey. I don't believe Amanda used a cane yet. Like, she was still very functioning and quite early in her vision loss journey. But I remember it became an issue later in the season when they had to do a nighttime runway show because she had her night blindness. And so she was struggling. And like, I remember seeing that, and at the time I could still see during the day. And I didn't yet use a mobility aid full time. And I related to that because I understood that feeling of being able to see during the day but not at night. And that meant so much to me. So I know, first off, Madison's appearance on Love is Blind is going to be that first touch point for other people with RP, for other young Mollys. And that is so exciting and so important. And that is why representation matters. I just received a DM the other day from somebody, and they were like, I know this is gonna sound so silly, but I have MS, and I just watched your Dr. Mike podcast appearance, linked below if you wanna see it. Just the fact that you said multiple sclerosis, like you mentioned MS, meant the world to me, which sounds so silly. And I replied and I was like, it doesn't sound silly. When I know how that feels, like just hearing the word retinitis pigmentosa come out of somebody's mouth on TV or on a podcast or from another content creator makes me feel validated, makes me feel seen. I understand that if you've just always been seen, you've always seen yourself represented, you don't understand why just hearing a word makes you excited. But that's how little our community has. And so any step is a step in the right direction. However, in this video, I do have critiques, and I want to be so very clear that none of the critiques are of Madison. The critiques that I have of the representation are critiques of Netflix and how they have gone about this. So very clear. I have been following Madison on socials. I'll actually have her linked down below as well. I've been following her on socials like ever since the first episode. It's so funny. I like immediately went down a rabbit hole and found her instantly the day episode 1 dropped. And I started following her and she had like 2,000 followers. And now she has like almost 60,000. So I've been there since the beginning, let it be known. But yeah, there's none of the critiques that I have are on Madison herself. They are completely on how Netflix portrayed her story and in general, how they portray and utilize blindness in the grand scheme of Love is Blind. So that was how I felt upon initial seeing the trailer. And I had like a work obligation the next day, and I had planned to go to bed early and like get a bunch of stuff done that night to prep for my speaking engagement. That all went down the drain. I was too excited. Like I was like, I gotta power watch through this because like I wanna see her story. I wanna know what's up. And so I was watching all of the episodes, and like in the beginning of episode 1, she had a scene where it was like very briefly mentioned when they're like cutting back and forth to the different like women's house and men's house, and Nick and Vanessa are like in the houses talking to the participants about what they're in for. And like there was a quick clip of her mentioning it. But overall, like in those first pod episodes, like that big drop of pod episodes, I was like, where's our girl Madison? And it really frustrated me in this edit that like they used her for the trailer. She was the entire trailer. She was definitely the hook for the season. They were using her plotline as the buzz. And yet in the first drop of episodes of the pod dating, they showed her and Joe so little, which meant for me as a viewer, even though I have this immediate attachment and immediate connection to her, I couldn't even like connect deeper because they were showing so many, the Sparkle Megan and Jordan and all these other people, they were showing so much more. And I understand because there was like a lot of love triangles as per usual and all of this stuff, and like those made for compelling TV, and they always highlight the most dramatic pairings, right? So I understood that like maybe they didn't have as much drama, but Netflix had such a great opportunity with Madison to, in her confessional, like her diary cam, where she's just being interviewed direct to camera, where they cut in between. They could have asked her so many compelling questions, and maybe they did and they just chose not to put it in the edit, in which case I'm very curious as to why, but maybe they didn't ask these questions at all. And Madison, if you see this video, feel free to drop in the comment section and fill in some gaps for us, because I'm simply here speculating and talking about what I would have liked to have seen. But they could have asked her like to talk about how her diagnosis of RP has impacted previous relationships, if it has at all. How she typically navigates disclosing this diagnosis to potential partners. Does she do it straight up early on? Does she do it later? These are dynamics that for us with disabilities, especially those with progressive conditions like mine, these are things we constantly think about when it comes to dating. So this would have been a great opportunity to, A, provide that representation for those of us who find ourselves asking these very questions and having these very conversations with our blind friends if and when we have them, but also for the non-disabled community to see the impact that living with conditions and disabilities like this have on dynamics of dating. I think that would have been really great to have those little nuggets and sound bites. But really, they went from basically not showing Joe and her at all, like maybe one or two conversations we saw briefly, to then just like cutting to her disclosing her diagnosis to Joe. And I definitely like saw myself in her disclosure. She kind of was dancing around it a little bit, like in that she was like, okay, well, first off, like my eyes look normal, or I'm paraphrasing, okay, I'm not verbatim, but she said like my eyes look normal, and I so saw myself and so many others in our community, and while I could understand why some in the community may not like that phrasing, I also understand that when you're early in your journey, you have a lot more internalized ableism to work through. And for, like, I've talked about this in other videos in the past too, like I've spent a lot of my life being praised for not looking blind. That messaging also tells me that, quote, looking blind is something to feel shame around. And I've had to do a lot of work, unlearn that, and I still have to work through that. Like, I still know that I'm a high risk for cataracts, which will change the visual appearance of my eyes. And my doctors already told me that they likely would not remove them because it just wouldn't be worth it at my level of vision loss. And I know that if my eyes did change appearance, that would impact me because of the messaging I have been served my entire life. I heard her say that and it made me flinch a little, like it made me cringe a little, because we as a community are trying to like unwrap that narrative so much, but also I had deep empathy and understanding for that, because we in this community know that the moment you disclose to somebody that you have some kind of disability or a condition that may cause a disability in the future, there's immediate assumptions and immediate judgment because of the lack of representation we've had, because of the misrepresentation we've had. And so I very much understood why she did that, even if it made me like a little bit. And so she like goes through and explains that exact clip that we saw in the trailer, and what we get after that is basically nothing. Joe had very little reaction, to which I think he was likely processing. And I would very much assume there was a follow-up conversation about this the next date. I'm gonna guess, like, that he maybe had follow-up questions after processing and walking away for a bit, or something. Like, I would assume. If not, that's quite unusual. Like, I know in my case with dating in the past, always there's a lot of questions that come with disclosing my blindness. Like, anytime I would disclose my condition to men on dating apps or in dating early days, it would be like, we'd be playing 20 questions, except it was 60 questions. So I would assume there was follow-up. If there was, we did not see that. That was not a conversation they included. So really the only thing they showed was a brief disclosure and a very minor brief interaction following from Joe. We got no follow-up dynamics after that at all. I also want to state that I don't know if Madison identifies as being disabled. You can have a condition and not feel disabled by it yet. I think that's like, there's a huge nuance there, right? Like, what I saw, Madison does not use a cane. She does not use assistive technology. And I believe she still drives, because in the reunion that just happened, which by the way is like why I've waited till now to film this whole video, I wanted to make sure I watched the entire show. And when I'm filming this, the reunion just aired 2 nights ago. In the reunion, like, he mentioned walking her back to her car. So I assume she also still drives, which is very common in RP. Many people drive cars till they're like in their 50s. My perception is she still drives. And from watching her content, it seems she does not use a cane or anything. And the way she described it is that she can still see in the dark. It's just not the same way that sighted people can see, like narrowed field of view, like lower contrast, things like that, more dim. I've been fully night blind from birth. My RP is extremely aggressive, so I've never seen in the dark to any capacity, but it seems she does have still some level of night vision. It's just reduced. So she talked about how she'll often like trip off of a curb or up steps in dim and dark lighting, or she'll bump into stuff. And that was the only kind of other bit of representation we did get, was seeing in the hotel scenes in the like vacation post proposal, was once or twice the audio description said that she bumped into like a potted plant, or like bumped her shoulder on a door frame or something. And that for me, again, like just that little sliver felt validating, because that is something that I and my community deal with on a daily basis, especially in unfamiliar new environments, bumping into things. So as silly as that sounds, I did feel validated and being like, yes, girl, yes, that's very much real. That is our experience. And we also saw her mom having a discussion when she met Joe about like, are you prepared to support her through her potential vision loss, even if that comes as soon as next year. Again, like, he had a very non-reaction, which the optimistic side of me wants to believe that he's just like super progressive and like has no problems with the idea of blindness. But the pessimistic side of me feels like he was either like burying that and trying not to react, honestly, out of like either like not wanting to look bad to her family, on camera, publicly. He wasn't really thinking through what her going blind potentially actually meant. Like, I would feel that that dynamic would need a lot more conversation, because I have a lot of conversation about it when I get into relationships or start dating somebody, of like, what does this mean? What are the ways in which I would need you to help me? Like, how does this change the dynamics of our relationship compared to what you might be used to in a non-intrabled relationship? But I understand again that like she may not even identify as being disabled or blind yet. And I guess that's one point I want to make. I would view this as representation for retinitis pigmentosa. I would not consider this representation for blindness. And there is a difference there, because she does not use a cane. She does not yet interact with the world as a blind person. And again, this is like my perception. I am not speaking for Madison. I would love for her if she was like interested in doing an interview and chit-chatting more about it on the channel. I think that would be really cool to hear her perception, her experience. But I would say like overall, her dynamic of having RP didn't play a huge role in their relationship, which I personally found surprising given my experience and how much it has played a role in my dating, but I am also much later in my journey of vision loss than her. So of course it's gonna differ. And I would say just the way I saw myself represented in Amanda when I was much earlier on in my vision loss journey, more likely people closer to the beginning of their journey will see themselves more in Madison than somebody at my level does. Which is why I feel like it's more so representation for like progressive diseases versus for blindness as a whole. And that's why it's so important to remember that we're not a monolith. We're a very diverse community. Even within blindness, there's so much diversity of our community and our experiences, but that is why diverse representation matters, and we need representation across the full spectrum. I just personally would have been interested to see like more of the conversations around it, but maybe that's just not something she feels like she needs to have yet, or they were being had off camera, or Netflix just chose not to include it. I don't know. Which kind of brings me to why I think Netflix has waited this long. We're on season 9 of the US and many other seasons. I've not watched all of the ones from other countries because they're dubbed and that's not interesting to me. I have watched the UK one, no representation there. So I don't know if any of the other like French or Sweden or whatever have had representation. But like for me, this is the first I've seen. 9 seasons deep, multiple countries in. And I think the reason Madison was a great candidate for this is she is very palatable to the general public, to a mainstream audience. She does not, quote, look blind. She does not use mobility aids. She doesn't visually look disabled in any way, and it does not impact her day-to-day life in a significant manner yet from what we could see. That's very palatable. It was a very easy way for them to dip their toes into representation at a surface level without having to deal with the complexities of true interabled relationships. We have seen very little representation of disabled people in mainstream dating shows. We've had Abigail Herringer, who is deaf and wears cochlear implants on The Bachelor. I read her book, which is how I know about that because I did not watch The Bachelor. I want to say there was maybe an amputee, but I could be entirely making that up, so don't quote me. And that, as far as I know, that's what we've got. I've seen like a few kind of chronic illnesses here and there, lightly shown, but we've had no significant representation outside of things like Love on the Spectrum, which is a disability dating show that is dedicated to disabled people dating. It is not integrating disabled people into dating non-disabled people. We don't have that representation. We have not yet had that. And I think this was Netflix's way of trying to like dip their toes in that water. Like they had Daniel with the sister with the guide dog, and then they have Madison with early diagnosis RP. And they're like trying without really having to do it seriously. And the reason I think we've not had it in any shows in a serious, significant way until now is because a lot of the world assumes that non-disabled people don't want to date disabled people. And there's so much ableism in the narrative of interabled relationships. Speaking of, shout out to Shane and Hannah Burka, who wrote Interabled, which is an exploration on interabled relationships. So check out that book if you're interested in like delving more into that conversation. But every relationship I've been in with a non-disabled partner, my partner gets praised for being with me. And or I hear, you're so lucky to have a partner. Almost 3 years into my relationship with my partner, I still hear from absolute random strangers that do not know us that I am lucky to have my partner. I want to be so clear, my partner is incredible and wonderful, but they don't know that. For all they know, he's abusive. Like, for all they know, he's not a good partner. But I'm still lucky to have him because I'm a disabled person and therefore I am devalued and I am not lovable to most people. I am constantly being asked what I contribute to our relationship, what my role is in the partnership, because nobody sees that I could contribute equally even if my equal looks different. And that is a conversation reality TV is not ready to have yet. That is a conversation that makes the average public uncomfortable. Interabled relationships are highly stigmatized. If it's not explicitly about disability, they don't want us in the room. They don't want to have those conversations because they assume that if they had somebody, say, fully blind in the Love is Blind pods that uses a cane or a guide dog and a screen reader and needs sighted guide and can't drive a car and needs accommodations or assistance with certain things, that is undesirable to all the non-disabled pod daters. That is my perception. That is my hypothesis as to why we've not generally seen it. And obviously I hate that. Obviously I completely disagree. Most of my partners have been non-disabled. I know I add value to this relationship. I know I am a worthy partner. I know I and my community are worthy of love, whether that is from somebody else who's also disabled or from somebody who's not. But it is a dynamic we don't generally see on TV, and that's why people like Cole and Charisma, Shane and Hannah are so important to show those relationships and those dynamics. Two things I forgot to mention, so I'm popping in here because I feel like I want to take a second to defend my girl Madison, because there was like a few things, and look, with shows like this, reality TV, especially Love is Blind, there's always people who do a lot of commentary videos like on the individuals that are in the show. I want to say like the characters, the different people, like they break down different scenes and have opinions on dynamics and blah, blah, blah. And as I said at the beginning of this video, that's not what this video was about, but there was two things that I saw going around about Madison in some of those commentary content videos where I was like, I feel like a blind perspective or like an RP perspective needs to be brought to this, because these are people who do not have the disease, know nothing about it, and I was like, I feel like context is important. So one of them was from the reunion. I saw this person on TikTok breaking down the different reunion looks before the reunion happened, like from the photos that were posted. And I don't know if it was this exact photo that Madison had posted on her Instagram that this woman was referencing. But this is a photo of Madison that she posted on her Instagram from the reunion. And this woman was like talking about Madison's dress and her makeup and her hair and blah, 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 and was like very complimentary. But she was like, but like her eyes look really weird. Like, I don't know what's going on. Her eyes look really weird. And I was like, in my head, obviously I can't see the photo, so I truly have zero concept of what she meant by that. But in my head, immediately, my thought was she's under bright lights. Because these are like photo shoot photos, like they're on a red carpet. And I've been on many a red carpet where they have all of the super bright box lights set up. I'm on set all the time where I'm dealing with bright lights. And as somebody with RP, people with retinitis pigmentosa have photophobia. It's very common to have light sensitivity to some degree, especially when you're in maybe a darker environment, like an evening event, and then you go stand under bright lights, because the lighting difference that your eyes adjusted to the darkness, and then they're suddenly under extreme bright box, what's the lighting I'm talking about? Professional photography lighting,
Yeah, that's all you call it.
Our eyes, when you have RP, do not adjust at the same speed to light changes that people without RP do. So for example, growing up for me, when I would go in from recess, I would be basically completely blind for 10 minutes until my eyes adjusted to the indoor dimmer lighting. And when I would go from being in a dark environment to outside for recess, my eyes would really hurt and I'd be squinting a lot and I'd have to put sunglasses on. And it's kind of like when people go to the movie theater in the summer in the middle of the day and then they come out and you guys are like, ugh! That's like us every single time we go from dim lighting to bright lights. So if her eyes in any way looked weird, which I really truly have no idea what that meant, my assumption is that it was likely her trying to deal with eye pain or a stinging sensation or the feeling of wanting to squint, but she's taking professional photos and wanting to, look her best. So she's trying to keep her eyes open, even if it's uncomfortable. I've been there many a time. So that was where my head went when I heard that. And then the other piece of commentary was this scene when they were out, they had just met after getting engaged, and then they went on to, I don't know, Mexico or somewhere. Joe got a little bit too drunk at the group hang and he left her and he went back to the room and he went to sleep, and then Madison went back to the room later and was kind of freaking out with his behavior. And some people were like, she was doing too much, she was doing the most, she needed to calm down, clearly he was just drunk and needed to sleep it off, she was being over the top. Absolutely not. I think most of us can admit he was being weird. If you saw the scene, I've been around many a drunk person, and I have been many a drunk person myself. His behavior was very unusual in my opinion, and I think any woman, even without any kind of disability, would feel uncomfortable if a man they frankly barely know, who they have only spent very minimal time with in person, and they are supposed to be in close quarters with, like sleeping in the same bed, is displaying really unusual behavior that is out of character for the little bit that you know about them. But adding the layer of having a condition like RP, which we saw at least once or twice in that very hotel room, in the dim lighting, she was bumping into things. Meaning that environment was not an environment where she had significant usable vision. Yes, she still has usable vision in dim lighting, but not the way a fully sighted person does who does not have any kind of condition like RP. And so that adds an extra layer of discomfort because now you're with a man who's displaying very unusual behaviors that are not predictable, and you're in an environment where your vision is impaired. And as somebody who doesn't yet use a cane or maybe have as many skills to deal with vision loss as somebody further on in their journey, that's extremely scary. I, as a disabled woman, as a blind person, feel extremely vulnerable around men that I don't know and would feel unbelievably uncomfortable in that situation if I was her. I do not think she was being dramatic. I do not think she was overreacting. And my suspicion is that her RP played an extra role in her discomfort and her fear in that moment, especially because she likely had to walk back alone or have help from one of the other people to walk back from the party in the dark to her room since her partner dipped out after getting too drunk. And so I just want to add that perspective of when you have any kind of disability or any kind of disadvantage like reduced vision in a certain circumstance, that adds an extra layer of vulnerability, and extra layers of vulnerability add a heightened fear, anxiety reaction to things. So there is my context that I feel was missing from a lot of people's commentary on this.
Overall, I think we can be grateful that we're moving forward and taking steps in the right direction and still be critical of how they chose to go about it. I think that Madison's inclusion was important, but was surface level and didn't meaningfully address any of the real barriers that disabled people have in dating, any of the real stigma around interabled relationships. It did not show Jo fully falling for her, disability included, which, I mean, that's not on Netflix or on anybody in the situation. That's just, you can't prep for that. That's reality TV. But that is the kind of representation eventually I would love to see done somewhere. Surface level inclusion is great, but I would love to see more meaningful representation moving forward. Yes, I was excited to see Madison. Yes, I am still excited that we have a new RP baddie on social joining the crew. Yes, I think representation matters. Obviously, I talk about it so much in my book. I talk about it so much on this platform. I've dedicated so much of my life and my career to it, and I'm excited to keep seeing steps go forward, but we need more. This is not enough. This is a step, but we've got to take so many more. We've got to be sprinting and we are still crawling. We don't just want inspiration or clickbait. We want the real complex stories of dating with a disability. And until then, we will keep being grateful for what we get while still demanding more, because we need more than just little breadcrumbs to satiate our hunger. But overall, I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts on this situation, especially if you have RP. How did you feel about this? Madison, feel free to jump in the comment section and give us the real tea, or hit me up in the DMs and maybe we could do like a little virtual interview and get you on the channel. I think that would be awesome. Gonna have lots of stuff linked down below. And like I mentioned, you can click here to watch my original video on my thoughts on Love is Blind as a concept. As a blind person, do I think love is blind? Spoiler, I don't. Or you can click over here to watch another video of mine. Bye.